Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today we are going to take a look at this weekend's full moon in Virgo, and I'm going to tell you about 3 key features that you should keep in mind for the full moon as it comes through this weekend. So that is our goal for today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to tappity tap, tap, tap the like button, smash it, press it, dance on it, tickle the like button. That was one of my favorites. Share your comments and reflections too. We'd love to hear from you guys. And you can find a transcript of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Now, something that I am excited to share with you guys. We have, so for those of you who attended the Pluto webinar last week, thank you. It was really nice to see so many people come out for that webinar. And I want to take you over to nightlightastrology.com, where if you click on the live events page, you can see the next event, which is Thursday, March 14th. We are going to be looking at the role that Neptune plays in love and relationships. Pluto has very specific significations that tend to show up in love and relationships. We talked about those at length in our first webinar. In this webinar, we're going to be looking at Neptune, which has its own unique thing going on. Lots of very specific patterns and themes, learning and healing that tends to come up with Neptune when involved in love, sex, and relationships. So we're going to be looking at that next. You can register. It's $20. The webinar is March 14th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you can't make it live, a recording will be sent to you after the event. We are going to be having once monthly webinars going forward. And so I'll have more coming up in April. There's a talk on Uranus and love. What topics would you guys like to see in the monthly webinar series? What would you really love to learn about? Feel free to drop me a line in the comments section, and I'll take it into consideration for sure. Okay, well, on that note, today, just a brief preview of the full moon in Virgo so that everybody is ready for the weekend. All right, so here we can see that the full moon is coming through about 5 degrees of Virgo, opposite this little log jam of planets in Pisces, which we've been spending some good time with this week. And you'll notice that that full moon is coming through February 24th. That's tomorrow, Saturday, at about 6 a.m. like Central Time. But that's depending on what time zone you're in. It's Friday night into Saturday that you're really going to be feeling it. And the full moon will carry over into Sunday, the 25th, as the moon will still be in Virgo. So not like the world's biggest full moon, honestly, but there are some really interesting significations that we can notice in this full moon. And that's what I want to point out today so that you are equipped for the weekend. So 3 key features of the full moon in Virgo that I want to draw our eyes to. The very first one, I have an app that's like dinging. Hold on, let me just turn off my notifications so that I don't feel like I'm going crazy. Pause notifications. There we go. Okay, sorry. Oh, okay, let's put the full moon back up on the screen. So 3 key features of this full moon in Virgo. Number 1, my God, it's all about Mercury. How do we know that? Well, look at the dignities. We have the moon in Virgo, the full moon in Virgo, which is the domicile and the exaltation of Mercury. And woady-doty, we have the moon also in the bound of Mercury. So bound, domicile, and exaltation of Mercury. Well, the moon is a guest in all of these powers of Mercury, and the full moon opposes Mercury. Oh, that's rough. And so what does that mean exactly? The reason that that is rough is because the opposition to the host, when the host has so much power over the full moon, suggests a polarization that is going to be very strong during the full moon. It's like on the surface, you look and you go, oh, it's just a full moon in Virgo. It doesn't look like anything's really going crazy. Look at the dignities and you get a totally different story when considering that this full moon in all of these powers of Mercury is opposite Mercury. And Mercury is badly debilitated. Mercury is in its detriment in Pisces, in its fall in Pisces, and is combust the sun right now in Pisces. So imagine that you're a house guest in Mercury's home, and Mercury has just imagine something ridiculous. Mercury's taken LSD, has never had LSD before, doesn't know how to handle him or herself on LSD, and is not going to be the most available, helpful, sane, stable host if you're like, hey, where's the bathroom? You know? So now that's just I'm just creating a fun, vivid example of why this might be troubling or problematic. But the truth is that Moon Mercury oppositions, where the moon is so reliant on Mercury and Mercury is just drunk under the table, that creates a lot of tension. So, what kind of tension? Well, first of all, Moon Mercury oppositions have long been associated with mental and emotional health breakdowns or instability, uh, whether that's anxiety or depression or melancholy or an inability to keep boundaries or an inability to see things clearly or the tendency of the rational mind to lose its grip on a situation and to exaggerate or to lie or deceive or to be taken in by false information. Basically, the tendency to pit the rational against the emotional in ways that are very polarizing. So you have that kind of mind, mental, and emotional dichotomy being amplified and polarized. Okay, so that's what makes this full moon a little bit gnarly. You have the potential to not be at your best when it comes to the weighing and balancing of rational and emotional factors together at the same time. You could put this differently and think about it through earth and water. Earth is practical, formal, structured, solid. Water is fluid and movement oriented. So, are you able to navigate between the practical and formal, as well as the fluid, changing, dynamic, and relatively unstable elements in a day, in a relationship, in an environment? This opposition suggests that it could be rather difficult. So let's say you're someone who tends to get fixated on control over the details, and there's all of this fluidity and chaos and change and moving parts. You're going to experience that as more chaotic and polarizing at this time. If you're someone who does well with those kinds of situations, maybe you have the disposition to be better with those kinds of situations, and it's reflected in your birth chart. You may not even notice it. But for a significant amount of people, you're going to notice that the moon in all of these powers of Mercury, with Mercury so banged up and opposite, it doesn't make for the greatest, most stable conversation between mood, mind, environment, body, emotions, speech, intelligence, and sensitivities. It's like it's more like a tendency to be extremely reactive to subtle stimuli that create like an allergic reaction in your body. There's more of that in the air this weekend. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is that this opposition is not always easy. You'll find, for example, that people who have the moon opposite Mercury in their natal charts, they may be interested in human psychology and emotion. They may be very moody people. They may be writers or romantics, but maybe at some point in their life they had to overcome various instabilities in mind and mood. And I was like, it's like a challenge that they have to go through. Not always, but like that's a very real thing. I was born with the moon opposite Mercury in my own chart in my early 20s when that axis was getting activated through some very powerful transits. I went through a period of substance abuse and addiction, and then had to go through recovery and used, entheogens, highly, otherworldly, destabilizing mental and emotional experiences that were ultimately very healing and grounding, but that required I work through various family karmas when it came to mental and emotional health. I mean, that's the kind of thing that Moon Mercury brings up. So don't be surprised also if there's a sort of secondary layer of looking at mind, mood, environment, family or ancestral history, and mental health or intellectual health or communication patterns that can all come up. So it's all about Mercury, number one. Apologize, I've got a scratchy throat. I'm still I'm almost 3 weeks into dealing with this cold, and it's almost gone, but I've still just got like stuff. Anyway, I apologize. So let's go to part number 2. It's all about Mercury versus Venus. Now, this is a secondary layer to the exact same thing. So let's take a look at that full moon again. Moon is in the fall of Venus, while Mercury is in the exaltation of Venus and the bound of Venus, right? So we have the classic Mercury-Venus dichotomy being sort of echoed here in the dignities. Moon in all of the powers of Mercury and Mercury in the powers of Venus is a way of saying that the classical opposition between Mercury and Venus is highlighted. So we already talked about Moon and Mercury as an opposition, but one of the ways that ancient astrologers had of explaining the signs of Pisces and Virgo, respectively, had to do with the exaltation of Venus and the exaltation of Mercury in those signs and their fall in the opposite signs. So they basically said, look, the reason that Venus is in her fall in Mercury's exaltation and Mercury is in its fall in Venus's exaltation is because the rational and the sensual also carry the tendency for polarization. That's just something you have to be aware of with these two signs, that they can polarize with each other. And the reason that one of the reasons that they polarize is also because mental energy and sensual energy are not often, they sometimes clash. Think about if you're going out dancing and your dance partner wants to sit down and talk about, politics or, algebra. It's like, that's kind of Mercury and Venus. So we also have this tension in the air during the full moon, not only between the mental and, let's say, emotional, but also between the sensual and the rational. So same thing, slightly different way of putting it, that is there in the dignities based on the power of Venus that Mercury is in, both bound and exaltation, while opposing the moon, who's totally reliant upon that Mercury, and also in the fall of Venus, where Mercury tends to be stronger. So we also have that tension. And then number 3, we also have the very potent upcoming square, really from both Mars and Venus, but I'm just going to focus on Venus today. Over the weekend, the other thing that's happening is Venus is squaring Jupiter. So you'll see that square come through between Saturday, February 24th and Sunday, February 25th. Now, to me, this is not bad. Really, this is not a bad thing. You have Venus in her own bound in Aquarius, squaring Jupiter, who's in her sign. And so you have some reception here. Interestingly, Jupiter's also in the bound of Mercury. I find that fascinating. So Mercury's still playing a role in the difficult passage that Mercury is going through. It can't help but affect everything right now. But Venus square Jupiter is nice because the two benefics getting together in a square with Venus in the overcoming position, it suggests to me an accommodation or an adjustment of mental, intellectual, organizing, more abstract energies in order to accommodate the goals or visions or hopes or wishes or desires of Venus. And that tracks when you think about what the moon opposite Mercury might mean, or what Mercury's transformation and all these powers of Venus might mean. It's as though our intelligence, the organizing patterns in the mind, the blueprints on the table, again, which we've been saying a lot lately, need to adjust or change. A change of mind, intellect, rationality. Maybe it needs to accommodate Venus more. Maybe we're being too rigid mentally. We need to open up to make more room for Venus. Or maybe on the other hand, we're being too wishy-washy, boundaryless. We're being, our desires are not realistic or rational. And so there needs to be some grounding of the Venusian or of the emotional within a more rational construct, a plan, something that's a little bit more structured. But still, it doesn't negate what the emotional or Venusian qualities are trying to establish right now. So I see that Venus-Jupiter square as really helping this full moon to be less chaotic and more organized, and sort of bringing some harmony between mental, rational, and emotional or sensual energies together over the weekend. Venus in Aquarius, an air sign, Jupiter in Taurus, earthy Venusian sign, the exaltation of the moon. So to me, that's just like a silver lining that I thought was worth mentioning. Anyway, okay, that's it for today. Quick video. I'm hoping by Monday my voice is better, but holy cow. And it's funny because, I went and occasionally I see a chiropractor. So I went and saw this chiropractor, and she was like, she'd lost her voice and she'd gone through like 3 weeks. And I was like, it's just going around like in Minnesota. It's just like the virus of the year, I guess. But it's like this double whammy of laryngitis where anyway, I hesitate to say anything because as soon as I do, there'll be at least 30 people offering me unsolicited advice about what to drink or whatever. So anyway, hope you guys have a great weekend, and we will see you again next week.